Okay, it looks like it's happening. We are just finally connecting to Facebook Live so that we'll be streaming live. And this means that if you are catching this and you have some questions for me, I would be delighted to answer them. I can see the comment section now. So if you join us and you have a question for me, I'd be delighted to answer them. Anything having to do with being a creative activist or something about your own creative entrepreneurial journey or work that you're working on, feel free to drop it into the chat and I will be able to see it, which is one of the reasons I like doing the Facebook Lives, because then I can see, I can have people part of the conversation live happening. All right. So, welcome. We are recording. We are live. I think everything is set up now, finally. Had a little technical difficulty getting started here today. And I'm just getting back from being in Minneapolis for a bunch of days last week. And it's the first time back in the studio, and it's a little chilly in here today. So I am a little more bundled up than I typically would be. So anyway, I'm really happy that you're here today. I'm I'm just so I'm just so excited about talking about creating from the soul and really listening to the heart. That's our topic for today. So, first of all, hello, beautiful souls. I want to welcome you back to the Thriving Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle Senza. I'm an artist, an activist, an educator, and an empowerment coach. And I really have been on this creative entrepreneurial journey, I guess you could say, for maybe 35 years now. And it's been a wild ride. As many of you probably know, if you've experienced life as a freelancer, you know, a gig economy worker, an artist, you know, there are a lot of like inconsistencies in that kind of occupation. And so I like to talk about those things. I like to talk about how to stay grounded, how to stay optimistic, how to overcome obstacles, actually how to even see obstacles as gifts, really like a blessing in disguise often that is put there to help us learn something new, you know, something that we might not have had to consider prior. And that just adds to our tool belt of creativity. That's how I like to look at it. So I have my notes here. There's a lot I'd like to cover today. And once again, I'm so grateful that you're joining me today. So today's episode is about something that really lies at the core of being an artist, being a creative person, musician, writer, poet, dancer, visual artist, performance artist. It really is a part of who we are as creatives. And a key element to our creativity if we let it be seen. So it also has to do with visibility and invisibility, right? So, because, for example, we cannot see our soul. What does the soul look like? What does it feel like? Can you measure it? Can you weigh it? Can you compare it to another soul, like in physical terms? No, no. So, anyone who knows me well knows that I am fascinated by invisible things and concepts that are related to things we cannot see and yet have tremendous impact on our lives. So if you're curious about that, go check out my creative research platform called the Invisibility Lab. It's invisibilitylab.com, I believe. And yes, I've got a lot there. I have another little website, a blog called 1000 Invisible Things. And that's another place you can go to find some of the research I've done and the work I've been really interested in exploring. Anyway, I digress because we're talking about invisible things, soul, soulful artistry, or as I prefer to say, soul-led art making and creative work. Okay. So How do we create from the heart? In this episode, we're going to talk about how to stay connected to your heart and soul in your creative work and how to make sure that what you create reflects your deepest truth. Creating from the heart isn't always easy, especially when the world around us is full of expectations, full of pressure, full of comparisons, full of stress and drama and all of the things that come with being alive on the planet. So when if anyone's had this experience of really being able to tap in and find that place inside ourselves, that place where our authentic voice lives, where our soul lives, that's when the magic happens. So we're going to explore what it means to create from the heart and how you can stay connected to that beautiful, powerful place within yourself. So to start, let's start with a metaphor. I think this metaphor captures the essence of soul-led art making, working from the soul, from the heart. So imagine your heart as the temple for your soul. So imagine a space in your chest, and in that temple of your heart is your soul, and the soul is represented by a flame. It's your inner flame. You know that song, There's a Light in You? Well, it's true. There is a light in you. And that light, some say, many say, is a part of the all that is, that exists outside of our incarnated bodies on this planet. I know it sounds a little woo. It is kind of. Maybe you don't agree, maybe you do. Go do your own fun research. I love going down rabbit holes around all kinds of things, and this is one of them. So, but honestly, it's not new to think about your soul as an inner flame, right? As your true self. And just imagine this beautiful glowing light and that it fuels your creativity. It fuels everything, actually, your decisions, your thoughts, your expression, your creativity, all the things. And so the more you tend to that flame, the brighter it becomes, the brighter it shines, and the more powerful and personal your art becomes because of it, because there's a real essence of truth that resides there in your heart. So often we're working from the head. The majority of the time we think and we make decisions based on what our head is telling is the logical or right thing to do. But we very likely and very often get different answers when we check in with our heart, that heart space. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. And so, yes, so the more you tend to that flame, the more authentic, the more powerful and personal your art becomes. When we ignore it and we focus too much on external pressures or what we think other people expect us to create or what we think we should be creating, that flame can die down. And a perfect example of that for me is when I remember going to the studio. This is back like in the early 90s. And I had been on a roll with selling a lot of my work. And I wanted to keep making these small pieces because they were helping to bring in money and they were fun to do. And then at a certain point, I was kind of stretching and reaching and trying to duplicate what had been working. And then it didn't feel so juicy or interesting. And it just, felt repetitive. And so I'm curious, like, have you ever had that experience yourself? Um, do you notice, like, could you describe what that feeling, that difference in the feeling is like? I kind of am having a hard time coming up with words for it. So if you want to give it a go, I'd love to read it. So as I said, there's a big difference between creating from the head and creating from the heart, right? When we create from the head, we're often trying to control the outcome. We're thinking about what will sell, what will be popular, what will get the most attention. But when we create from the heart, we're tapping into something so much deeper. We're creating from a place of intuition and emotion and curiosity and authenticity. We're allowing our true selves to come through in our work. I know for myself that curiosity is a huge driver for me. I am very curious about things. I like to try new things. I like to experiment. I like to play with chance. And yeah, that always goes much better when it's coming from my heart and from something I'm inspired or, curious about, as opposed to like a more um, cog- cognitive choice, more head-based choice. So, well, here's an example. Frida Kahlo, for example, her work was deeply, deeply personal, right? It was reflecting her own experiences with pain and love and identity and struggle. And she didn't shy away from her emotions. In fact, she poured them into her work. And that's what makes her work so raw and honest and really a reflection of her heart and her soul. And I think that's also a key reason why her work is so powerful and resonates with so many people, because she's willing to shine a light on the reality of her experiences. And by doing so, it allows some of us to recognize ourselves in her pain, in her struggles with love, in her maybe her struggle with identity. And so it gives us a visual language and some space to think about our own experiences, and even perhaps some permission in a way to be with our struggles, to be with our questions and our discomfort, our pain, and the experiences that are challenging for us, right? She didn't, yeah, she really didn't shy away from that. And it wasn't like she was putting it out there for pity, obviously. She wasn't like, oh, poor me, please pity me. It's the opposite. You could see and feel strength in her paintings. Like, wow, she is enduring this and she is getting through, and she's using her art to help get her through. Isn't that amazing? It's like really incredible. So that's really what soul-led art making is really all about. It's about being brave enough to show the world who you really are. And I want to take a moment to reflect, or I'd like you to take a moment to reflect on your own creative journey. Think about a time when you created something that felt deeply personal and meaningful. How did that experience differ from times when you were focused on external validation, on like what other people might be expecting from you? What did it feel like to create from the heart? Just tap into that memory a little bit. A memory that comes to mind for me is that back in the 90s, I had a very large contemporary art gallery on the third floor of a building. And on the second floor, I had my studio. And there were times when I really was, I felt overly concerned with what will people think if they come into my studio while I am working on these pieces. And I haven't really worked through my process or my ideas, and they're just all in development. And in fact, I remember, uh, a lot of people had known me for doing a lot of representational work, like this, the industrial landscapes and things like that. And somebody came into the studio and looked at this new series of paintings that I was doing that was purely fun and straight from the heart and just joyful and curious, colorful chicken leg paintings, actually. And his face was like, what is that? Right. And, had I not had confidence in myself at that time, I would have been really crushed and really second guessed myself. But I recognized what was there for me. And I figured if it's there for me, it may be there for someone else. right? There might be, like I said about Frida Kahlo's work, like she took a risk putting that work out there about herself, but that was what was so strong and important in her soul, in her heart, right, to do. And so she did it. And she risked being shut down, being, ostracized for creating that kind of work because it's not what was commonly created and commonly popular and selling like crazy. So it was interesting to have that response from the person that came into the studio. And I was just like, I guess it doesn't appeal to you. And so be it, fine. And fortunately, that was not my dealer, my art dealer. And I continued exploring that as much as my heart desired, which was quite a bit. And it was very fun and turned out to be quite popular. People loved those paintings. But like I said, it was a big departure from the very representational, very demanding work I'd been doing before. So, how do we stay connected to that inner flame? I like to think of it as listening to your inner voice. Our heart speaks to us all the time, and it's a very soft voice. It's really easy to miss it. It's often drowned out by the noise of the outside world, our own minds, very busy, the monkey mind saying, do this, do that, oh, you should do this, all that kind of thing. But staying connected to your heart means learning to quiet that noise so you can really hear what your soul is trying to say, right? You can feel the intuition. You can sense the idea coming forward. You can allow the hand to move in that way or the words to flow in that way or to try something new, right? And to do this, you really first need to embrace vulnerability. Like, yeah, creating from the heart really does require vulnerability. It means allowing yourself to explore emotions and experiences that may feel uncomfortable, raw, even painful. But excuse me a moment, I'm getting hot. Here's the thing. Those emotions are often where the most powerful, truthful art comes from. Like I was saying about Frida. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, your work will resonate more deeply with others because it's real, it's honest, and people sense that. They love that. It allows them to connect to their truth and what's real and honest for them, right? So the second thing is trust your intuition. Your heart knows the way, even when your head doesn't. That's why it's so important to trust your intuition during the creative process. When you feel drawn toward a certain idea or a certain way of expressing yourself, follow that instinct, even if it doesn't make sense right away. Even if it's messy, even if it's ugly, just follow the intuition and allow it to unfold and see what happens. Often your intuition will lead you to places that your rational mind would never let you go. They'd never have taken you. And then finally, create without an agenda. One of the best ways to stay connected to your heart is to create simply for the joy of creating, which is what those chicken leg paintings were. It was just for the joy of painting. It was like, what does it feel like to play with colors I never use and making marks I don't typically make and playing with color and textures that I had not explored in years, or maybe even ever in some cases. And it was just so much fun. It was really a delight. You really just do it for the pure joy of creating and without worrying about the outcome. For many of us who rely on our creativity for our income and our reputation, that can be really, really hard to do, right? To just separate from what's been working and to jump into playing with what might be, what might want to be expressed that's new, that we've never tried before. So when we can let go of the pressure to produce something perfect or commercially successful, we really open up space for our true creative expression to flow. And for me, and I think for many artists who have allowed themselves to do this, they how I'm trying to find the word, they then have a collection of new exciting works that they're really proud of. They might be really selective about who they share it with, and only certain people may ever see that work. Or it may be the perfect jumping off point, and it's the next thing that they take out into the world. Point is, your soul is expressing through you when you allow it to really play and enjoy that space for exploring feelings, new ideas, following an intuition. Just see where it takes you. What's the worst that can happen, right? Someone sees it, doesn't like it, and says something snarky. So what? That's just their opinion. It's just a thought. It means nothing about you, it means nothing about your work. It just means something about them. So you really don't have to pay it much mind, as Marsha Johnson would say. Great activist. So let's see. Yeah, so actually, I found in my own practice that some of my most authentic work does come from when I'm creating just for myself. I'm thinking of like the survival drawings that were just like mark making, um, helping me get through a really difficult time and allowing my emotion to go someplace, following the sensations and the intuition of mark making that was coming through my body, representing all the stress and despair that I was feeling at the time. And then there was another series I did called The Frog Lady Adventures. And those really opened up a whole new aspect of my identity and my thinking around creativity. And it was such a delight to discover this new form of expression and the empowerment that it was kind of inspiring within me. It was just really exciting. And those two, not too many people have seen. And I have plans to make a book with that eventually. So these are just some ideas, some thoughts, and some examples of when I've just been creating for myself and then the exciting things that come out of it. Um, yeah, it's so enjoyable when I'm not thinking about an audience or a deadline or external recognition or what my gallery is going to say. I get to just create what my heart wants to create. And and also that's one of the reasons why my socially engaged art practice is really so near and dear to my heart. And it's deeply connected to my values, my passion for community, my desire for justice, my my impulse to help others rise, to help people find the healing that they crave, that they need, and to find their voice and to be seen and heard and celebrated for exactly who they are, and to know that they're not broken, right? Like just for us to all know that we are not broken. We might feel broken, we might feel inept, we might feel um, like failure, we might feel like we just don't have a clue. But really, is that really true? When you really think about it, is that really true? Or is that just all based on external crap? So I really love the feeling of being able to stay true to my values and to keep me connected to my heart. And to do that, even when the outside world might be pulling me in other directions and, tempting me with all kinds of other opportunities, if I only did this or if I only did that. But I can tell you that it has been such a satisfying journey to really trust my intuition and my creativity. My soul's speaking through me, my heart that holds my soul. So I encourage you, just try a few simple practices to help you stay connected to your heart in your creative work. One is to start a journaling practice. If you like, every morning you can write about what's on your heart, your emotions, your thoughts, your dreams, and let that guide your creative work for the day. You might be like, I'm feeling a lot of stress and ambivalence and fear even around this upcoming election. Um, I could write about those feelings. I could journal about the thoughts and the trail of my imagination where that goes, or I could draw it, or I could make a poem of it, or I could sing a song on it. You know what I mean? Nothing, but the point is, it does not have to be perfect. The point is to just let it be expressed. We're so much stronger when we can express what is in our hearts to express. And again, it's not for everybody to see. It's really for ourselves. It feeds our soul. It honors our soul. Another practice is to set aside time for playful creation. This is time where you create without any pressure or expectation. Just let yourself explore and express freely without worrying about whether the work is good or whether it'll ever see the light of day. It's for you and you alone. This I love doing. And I've created a lot of songs on my ukulele and on my guitar this way, and a lot of drawings. I don't usually use this for writing, but I could see how that would be a great practice for writing too. So let's see, what else did I want to make sure to cover today? So, uh, of course, creating from the heart isn't always easy. There are obstacles that can block us from accessing that soulful place inside ourselves. But these obstacles are really like clouds. They're temporary blocks that hide the sunlight of our true creative selves. And one of the biggest obstacles is fear of judgment, right? Like I talked about in the beginning with somebody walking into my studio and going, "What's that? Oh my God. Like what the F pretty much is what he was saying." So getting over the fear of judgment from others. When we create from the heart, we're putting something really deeply personal out into the world. And that can feel really vulnerable because it is, you know, there's no denying it. It's vulnerable. And we worry about how others will perceive our work, whether we'll be understood or if we'll face criticism. And here's the thing, meaningful art stirs strong reactions. And that's part of its power. The fear of judgment is natural, but it doesn't mean you should hold back. So I think the person who was so dismissive of that new work I was creating of the chicken legs with bright colors and all this fun stuff I was doing actually was uh, kind of triggered from that because he, as an artist, didn't create that way. He was more stymied in his creation, less expressive, and less willing to get vulnerable and play. Certainly not very playful. So that's something to bear in mind. It's more about them than about you. What's happening for you? Do you like what's happening inside your soul, inside your chest, inside your heart, inside your body, inside your energetic field when you are creating from the heart and making something new, trying things out? And then another common obstacle is self-doubt. That's definitely been a big one for me at times in my life. Inner critic, hello, super loud, telling us what we're good at, not good enough, and telling us, yeah, not the opposite, telling us that we're not good enough and that our work isn't worthy or that it sucks and that we're imposters. And but here's the thing, self-doubt is a liar. It's a total liar. It disconnects us from the truth of who we are and what we have to offer. Right? Can anyone relate to that? Yeah, that critic inside. Would you recommend your best friend listen to that critic? No way. No way. So when you focus too much on getting it right, you lose the freedom to create authentically. I've definitely done that. I talked about that in the beginning. Maybe you can recognize an experience that you've had where you are focused too much on getting it right. You know, what does that look like? What does that mean? And what does that do to the creative juice in you? For me, it totally shuts it down. And then I just struggle with trying to get it right. No freedom or joy in the process. So then there's also the pressure of external success. right? Whether it's the pressure to sell your work, gain recognition, or meet certain milestones, these external expectations can definitely pull us away from our heart-centered creative path. It's easy to get caught up in what others expect of us and to forget why we started creating in the first place. So, how do we overcome these obstacles? First, let's reframe fear. Instead of seeing fear as a sign to stop, let's see it as a signal that you're moving closer to your authentic self. Fear means you're pushing boundaries and creating something meaningful. Second, focus on the process, not the outcome. When we shift our focus away from the final product and onto the act of creating itself, we reconnect with the joy and fulfillment that comes from the creative process, right? Yeah. We talk about that a lot in the Create community and the Create Collective. And that's one of the most joyful aspects of being an artist. Yeah, an example, right. Yeah, I see in the chat. Vincent van Gogh is an example of this. Throughout his life, he faced rejection, self-doubt, lack of recognition from the art world, but he continued to create from his heart. He trusted that his work was an authentic reflection of his soul. Yeah. And even when the world didn't immediately understand or appreciate it, he felt so strongly that he just needed to express that. That's what his heart wanted to express and get out into the world. So here's an exercise I'd love for you to try. This week, create something without sharing it with anyone. Don't post it on social media. Don't ask for feedback. Just create for yourself. Let it be a conversation between you and your heart and see how it feels. The last time I did this, I was really surprised by what came of it, what came out of it. And I did a few different pieces that were just born from that same state of exploration. And I really felt like it was so different from anything else I'd ever created, and that it was representing a moment in my life that had not yet been represented, and in a new way, an entirely new way that I felt I could continue or develop if I wanted to. And yeah, and actually very surprisingly, these drawings happened to be out when somebody came by the studio and they remarked on them. They're like, "Oh, what are those? Those look really intriguing." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." It's like, "Oh, wait, I'm not planning on showing those in the world." But it was really interesting to see that. And I found that often is the case. People really respond to work that's very personal, very authentic. Not like it has to be revealing and you're exposing all your secrets or anything like that, but that it expresses the emotions, the feelings, the reality of the situation that you're presently living in your life, if that makes sense, without revealing all the details. I actually, that's a key piece to some of the emotional healing work that I help people with. It's like, I don't need to know the whole backstory. I just need to know how you feel now, what sucks about feeling this way, how it's impacting your life, and then maybe some things about where you feel it, how it shows up in your life or in your body and your mind. And then we just go from there. And then we move through some exercises that kind of dissolve. They expose the feelings, they let the feelings come out in a very temporary, manageable way. And then they kind of dissolve and no longer have any charge on them. It's really a remarkable process. I love doing it, that emotional freedom work and that healing. Anyway, back to what we're talking about today. So, the power of creating from the heart. As we come to the close, the end of today's episode, I want to remind you that your heart is your true north in your creative journey. When you create from that place, you're always on the right path, even when it feels uncertain or vulnerable. Trust that the work that comes from your heart is the work that the world needs. And creating from the heart is an act of courage, an act of love, an act of truth. It's what makes your art not just beautiful, but powerful. So as you move forward, I encourage you to reconnect with your heart, whether through journal, meditation, playful creation, or simply listening to that quiet voice inside of you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'd love to hear how you're staying connected to your heart in your creative practice. So feel free to share your thoughts with me on social media, via email, in the comments here, or DM me. You're always welcome to DM me. And remember, your heart is the greatest guide. The greatest guide. So join me next week, Tuesdays at 2, every Tuesday at 2. I have something for you. And I look forward to seeing you next time. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Hope to connect soon.